So today I'm going to be making a video about first impressions. More so as I have evolved as a person, what I've started kind of looking for when I'm on a dating app or even when I'm on a first, second, like those beginning stages of a relationship, what I'm kind of keeping an eye out for. And these aren't things that I share with the man. Obviously, I'm sharing them on the internet and a man could watch this, but usually I'm not sharing this with them. I'm just observing, because people show you who they really are. And if you're telling them the things that you're looking for, they're if they're a manipulator, they're just going to imitate the things that you're looking for instead of showing you who it is that they really are. So it's taken me time to, people would tell me oh, you need to look for this and look for that, but I didn't necessarily understand why. It just felt like this list of moral expectations I should have that didn't sound fun. That sounded really lame. That sounded like they were going to keep me single forever, which they really might. But regardless of that, they are also for safety. And that's the biggest thing that I've realized today as I grow to care about my own personal self-worth, and as I grow to care about the safety of myself and valuing my body not being abused by other people, which has taken me a really long time to get there. These are the things that I've come to look out for. So, one of the biggest things that I'm definitely aware of now is that first impressions matter. And the main reason why the first impressions matter is because we are all putting our best face forward when we're meeting someone. For the first few months, we're all doing that. That's the natural part of dating. So because of that, if someone is already exhibiting certain behaviors as their best face forward, if this is you mustering up all of the energy inside of you to be the best version of yourself for me, and there's already red flags in terms of the laziness that you're appearing to have, in terms of the lack of boundaries or the lack of sexual filter that you're seeming to have verbally. I'm trying to think what else. If you seem like you're late all the time, some people aren't time oriented, and I understand that. This is more of just my personal preference and what I'm looking for. I'm just sharing that. So if there are some things where you're you're too strict and crazy, that's fine. I'm just saying these are the standards I hold myself to now, because these are things that it seemed like here's an example. I had one guy who said he was going to call me. He texted me. He said he was going to call me, and then he didn't the first day. So I pay attention to that, right? Next day, he said, "Hey, are you free to talk right now?" I texted back, "Sure." And then he didn't call. And in my head, normally in the past, I would have waited around by the phone, right? Oh my gosh, my worth is tied to men. When's he gonna call? Should I call him? I might have even just gone ahead and called him. But I didn't. I just sat there and I was like, you know what? He's showing me who he is right now. He just asked me if I was available to talk after already blowing me off the previous day. And now he's not even calling me. I said yes. And then he said okay. And then he never called. And so I waited about 20 minutes. And then I was like, should I even say something? Should I just whatever? And so I did, out of curiosity. I texted him, and I just texted him a question mark. And then he texted me, "Sorry, I'm driving." And I was like, okay, then why did you ask if now was a good time to talk on the phone? And he never responded. So I didn't say anything else. And then the guy ends up calling me 30 minutes later. I didn't answer the phone. I did not answer the phone. I'm available when I say I'm available. And if you don't have the consideration to check in about that, I'm no longer available, and now I'm not going to take the time to respond to you ASAP. That's what I found hypocritical, So anyway, the next day, this is what I find so funny now that I'm standing up for myself, because I never experienced this before I started doing it. The next day, I didn't tell him any of that. I just didn't respond. And the next day he said, "Hey, when would you be able to talk today? I will be on time and near the phone, and I will call when I say I'm going to call." And it was like he knew the whole time that he had done wrong, but I didn't have to acknowledge it, and it almost caused him to acknowledge it. So that's just an example of time. Are you respecting my time when I say that? It's not oh, you were 5 minutes late to the date, you're probably a psychopath, I'm never seeing you again. That's more so what I'm talking about. So anyway, that was a first impression that he made for me, because again, I don't barely know you yet, and this is you trying to put your best face forward, and those are the types of things that you're doing. So like, what does that indicate about you to me? Like, what am I supposed to take away from that? And kind of in that same vein, do you test me? Are you already we all test each other. That's just like, we do that as kids. We do that as toddlers. This is a human being thing that we do, is test boundaries. Whether more overtly or more subtly and subconsciously, we're always testing the environment to see, is it safe? Is it fun? How should I behave here? How do I fit into this situation here? Like, it's like something we almost have to do, really, to get information to understand what our behavior and the expectation of us is. But there's a difference between that, like, and even what I just said. I feel like he was testing me a little bit to see if I would just chase him around and he was allowed to behave however he wanted. I could be wrong, but I'm just saying that's a little bit of what I read into that, because he so fully understood what he did wrong the next day. There was like a knowledge about the behavior there. So I don't necessarily like that it seems like you're trying to see what you can get away with. And in that same vein, are you trying to get away with sexual comments, sexual innuendos, testing my boundaries sexually as well? Are you already doing that on the first date? Some part of this is just a cultural thing. I think we're all very normalized to this now. Like, oh yeah, they're talking about sex on the first date. I don't care. I literally do not care anymore, because here's the thing, guys. If we are actually looking for a long-term partner that we are on the same page with about stuff, you're going to have to wait. And if you compromise on those things that are important to you, like if you don't want your husband sexualizing you and having really high, crazy sexual expectations for you based off of his porn addiction that he might have, that a man might have that you're meeting on a date, you will never be able to fulfill that for him, okay? Period. It's impossible. It's like someone who's addicted to meth or addicted to heroin, period. They will always crave more. That is how addictions work, okay, guys? So if they have a sex addiction or they have a porn addiction, there is no amount of kinkiness that you can do as one person that will ever 100% satisfy that. They will always need more, whether that's through porn videos itself or cheating or whatever it is that is their kink. One person, you will eventually become boring, because you are not destined to be a porn star for the rest of your life within a marriage, okay? And that doesn't mean something is wrong with you. That doesn't mean that you're not enough. It means that they are an addict. And no amount of drugs can ever satisfy an addict either. But the drugs, they can't date the drugs, so it's okay. But with us, we're a person that they can talk to and they can manipulate and they can like project their disappointment from their addiction onto. Anyway, so yeah, that is something that I look out for. If you're already, because here's another example. I had one guy on a dating app. I made some joke about like, oh my, or no, it wasn't a joke. I said, oh my gosh, I almost just stepped on a butterfly, because I did. And he was like, oh, you could step on my face. Okay, yeah, funny. Like, I'm not over here like a grandma, like, yeah, who says that? Like, what does it mean? I know what he's talking about, but that indicates to me that you probably like really kinky stuff. So why do you like really kinky stuff? Is it because you're watching porn all the time? Are you still actively watching porn? Like, what is the intention with which you're having sex? I want someone who's on the same page as me, and so that is a red flag. And that's the other thing, guys. If you don't know what you want, that's okay, but just understand that if you're going into a relationship not knowing what you want and what to ask for, that other person will take the lead. That it's like dancing. Someone always has to be leading and someone always has to be following. And some parts of that, you know, there's like a natural give and take. But if you really don't know where you stand on things in terms of what to expect sexually, like that other person will take the lead. And so that doesn't mean that that's the right decision that should be made for the relationship. It just means that you don't know what to ask for. You don't know where you stand on things. And so their stance is going to take the lead instead. And do you really want that if they don't necessarily have a very good moral compass or a good head on their shoulders? Are they secretive? So when you're first dating someone, it's natural that you're not going to discuss like everything right away. There's something very unhealthy about oversharing as well. But there's also, I just pay attention to how much they're sharing about themselves. Like, what is this looking like? How much are they just like trying to ask me really? That's the main thing that I look for is, are they trying to get me to open up a lot about super personal things while not giving super personal information back? Or are they just kind of closed off and shy and they're not asking me for super personal information and they're also not giving any? That's completely different versus really trying to know a lot of intimate details about how I work as a person, vulnerabilities that I have, emotional vulnerabilities that I have, my familial relationships, my day-to-day, things like that. On a very intimate level, if they're asking those things and they're not giving in return, that's a red flag. That feels like a data collector to me, somebody who's trying to get a lot of information in order to manipulate me with it. And I'm not down with that today. And then another thing that's really significant to me is what their day-to-day routine looks like. And what ties into this as well is what their relationships look like with other people. So a lot of these manipulative people that I meet, they do not have close relationships with basically anyone. Like, maybe they're close with their family sometimes, but even when they're close with their family, it's like very shallow. They just don't have what I would call accountability partners in their life. It's just something that I look at. I look at the people that someone surrounds themselves with, including myself. Like, I look at myself and I'm like, okay, what am I surrounding myself with? Am I surrounding myself with people that are just yes men who just say yes to everything that I say? Whenever I have a problem, they just agree with me. And then I never really get that accountability in my life, because I want to make sure that I'm not just doing that myself. But if I look at someone else and I see that they're doing that, that's a red flag. Because what I've run into is that I date someone, we get in fights, they go back to their yes men, the people who are just agreeers, and then they get pandered to about how, yeah, you're 100% right, because they're not looking for that accountability. And then they come back and they almost use that against me. It's like a manipulative tool where they're like, oh, well, all my friends or my family said that you're wrong. And they don't want to think deeper about things. So I do look at their relationships. It's also a huge red flag if they don't have like real, genuine, intimate friendships with other people. A lot of these guys are sex addicts, and their only motivation, if they're a psychopath especially, their only motivation for forming a genuine, they're not capable of a genuine relationship, but their only motivation for forming any type of relationship is sex, or using that person for something like more money, higher status in a job. So sometimes they'll be friends with their coworkers, but you can tell that the coworkers don't even really know them that well. It's more of a shallow friendship because they're actually using them to eventually work their way up within the business. You'll just be able to tell over time, but yeah, I really pay attention to that because a lot of these guys really just don't have any friends at all. Whenever I'm talking to them and I'm not hanging out with them, I'll be like, oh, what are you up to? And they're always hanging out by themselves. A lot of times that might also be because they're sex addicts and they're not just talking to me, they're talking to other girls. And that goes into my other point with the day-to-day routine is, what are their hobbies? So yeah, with a lot of the unhealthy men that I met in regards to hobbies, their hobbies are watching porn, being on dating apps, talking to girls, looking at Instagram, being on Facebook. And I know everybody struggles with stuff like this nowadays, more and more. And this is part of what is a problem with the culture going on right now in the world, is that people are not having actual hobbies, things that give them value and worth outside of social media and relationships, sometimes specifically sexual relationships. And that is something that I look out for, because I used to struggle with that. I used to really struggle with that. So I'm not having judgment towards people about that, for real. It's that I am in a different place now, and I don't want to be with someone who's still getting their identity solely from social media, watching social media, absorbing social media, posting on social media. Like, what else are you doing with your day? Because I don't know if you've heard this, but it's like the top 10 people you surround yourself with or like say something about you. I don't know, there's like some famous quote that it's like, You can learn about yourself based on like the top 5 or 10 people that you surround yourself with or something. They talk about that from a business standpoint, but that's also just true in terms of what we're absorbing on a day-to-day basis. What are you filling your mind with? Because the moral compass of the world right now is like a little bit skewed, and a lot of people are finding their identity through strictly their body. I used to identify my worth with my body so freaking much, and that's what I'm working on not doing now. But I feel like social media obviously like causes us to feel temptation to do that, because we're looking at other people's bodies and other people's relationships and like sometimes other people's skills, while we're not spending the time developing skills because we've just been staring at a phone all day. And this is the first time in my life where I actually feel like I'm developing skills that I'm really proud of for myself, where I don't have the time to be on social media. I don't have the time to be talking to like a bunch of dudes. I don't even really have the time to be dating, because I'm getting so good at other things that I enjoy doing that I don't have the time to be bothered with a man. Did I ever think that I would say that? No. No. I was addicted to men. I was addicted to relationships. That was my hobby. That was what I ate and drank and slept and breathed thinking about all the time. I didn't have anything else for entertainment. And that's why I'd sit around waiting on a freaking text from a man all day, because I didn't have anything else to freaking do to occupy my mind, to make me feel good about myself. And so if I'm on a date with someone and it looks like they're still struggling with that thing that I used to still struggle with, I'm probably not in the same place as them, and I'm probably not gonna date them. And that's such a temptation for all of us, right? But okay, let's say that they're not on social media all the time. Let's say that they're not struggling with that stuff. They're not off the hook yet for my really long list of standards. So what do you find success in? What do you find your value in? Because some of these things don't mean that you're like a bad person or anything like that. But again, I want to know that we're on the same page. So like, are you like a workaholic? I've struggled with that in the past. I'm even in a place now where I'm really, really busy with myself. So if somebody was like, hey, I don't think I want to date you because it doesn't feel like you have that much time available and it feels like this is more of a priority for you than me, I would be like, you know what? I respect that, and you are 100% right. And that's why I feel like I'm not in a place to date right now, because this stuff is the priority for me. And with some men, their careers are still evolving, or their careers, period, are the priority. Making money is a priority for them. I'm not money oriented. So if somebody's main goal is to work like 80 hours a week because they're just like hell bent on having like a ton of money, and that's not a phase for them, that's something that they really just like want to do for the rest of their life, I'm not going to date that person. Not because like, oh, you're a jerk. It's not that. It's that we're not on the same page. He couldn't buy me gifts. He can't buy my love. Some people, like, that is their motivation. That's not my motivation. So I'm not going to be interested in that type of person. And this is the other thing I had to learn, is that I used to think if they're not I'm supposed to just like want to date them. If they seem like a nice guy, I should just want to date that person. That's not how that works. Like, you're allowed to have preferences. You're allowed to have something that you're looking for, like a flavor of ice cream. You know what I mean? Like, just because it doesn't have poison in it doesn't mean that I'm required to like every single flavor. So anyway, that's another thing that I really look out for now, are first the red flags in terms of like, wow, you don't know who you are as a person. And also, you know, a lot of people have cheated on me, and I've cheated on people in the past because I derived my worth and my value so much from attention and receiving attention and receiving affirmation and thinking that my worth was based on attention from men. One person couldn't cut it, because that's another addiction. Circling back to how one person will never be enough for you. So another reason it's a red flag. But yeah, that's like a really significant thing for me, is what does your day-to-day look like in terms of intimate, real, authentic, accountable relationships that create accountability, and your hobbies, where you derive your worth and your sense of success from. And then my last thing is just, again, it would almost tie into those relationships that they have, but what's their reaction when they're wrong about something? Like, not all of us are flawed in this way, where we don't like to be wrong about stuff, and it's hard for us to believe that us as this like perfect person who's got it all figured out would possibly ever be wrong about something, but shockingly we are. And everybody can tend to have like not the best reactions to stuff like this, but I guess what I look out for is it hard to muscle through their ego and their defense mechanisms that much just to reach a level where maybe we're even just beginning to consider that they were wrong, because I'm probably going to have to do that every single time. Talk about exhausting. I don't know if I'm up for the challenge. Or is it something where we can talk and maybe they don't think they're wrong right away, but they take the time to really think about it on their own. I don't have to like muscle through a bunch of stuff. We don't have to argue. I don't have to deal with them calling me names or putting me down. You know, that's obviously just super unhealthy, but also, do they just take the time to think about things on their own? Self-examine, you know, being a little self-aware, and then come back to me later on some level and say, you know what, I thought about that, you might be right. Or how does their thought process work with being wrong about things? I really pay attention to that, because again, if it's already, whatever it's like in the early stages of the relationship, it's only going to get worse, or it's going to stay the same. You're going to get burnt out, whatever. So that really matters to me. And then I guess my last thing that I just want to almost like ask you is, after considering all of this stuff about what to look for, what people's behaviors can indicate about the standards that they hold themselves to and what they expect from other people in terms of their behavior. Do they have really high expectations for other people? Do they have really high expectations for themselves? Do they seem like a pushover? Do they seem like a person who doesn't have like a very strong moral compass? Do they seem like a person who doesn't really know who they are? You know, after considering all of these things, I really challenge you to examine what your behavior indicates to other people about you. What do you seem like as a person? Do you seem like a person with a good moral compass? A strong moral compass where you know who you are, where you know what you're looking for? Do you seem like a pushover? Do you seem like a person who will cower and tolerate anything when pushed, kind of? I'm only saying this because I really had to look back and see how much my behaviors were speaking so loud about what I would tolerate and how little I knew myself. And I didn't even realize how much information I was giving away on my first few dates with men. And this is just one example. I used to brag about how sexually promiscuous I was to men. On like the first or second date, I would brag about it because I thought that made me really cool and really strong. And really what that was telling every single man was the things that they could get away with, the things that they could expect and put pressure on me for, that I would absolutely take on and try my best to give them, because I already was in a place where I didn't have a strong moral compass to know how to want better things for myself. And that's what I was basically telling them every time I bragged about how promiscuous I was that I didn't value my body and I would give it away easily. So anyway, I hope this video was helpful as always. And again, I really love hearing people's thoughts, so feel free to comment down below if you have any, and thank you.